Okay, so this Q&A is going to have to happen in multiple sessions. I've been waiting and waiting to have a big chunk of time to just do the whole thing, and it's not happening. So I'm just going to pop in here whenever I can, answer a question or two, and try to make the video not choppy. So I'm going to dive right in. Oh, and these aren't in any sort of order. I just kind of grabbed them all off YouTube and then threw them on a document, so they're kind of all over the place. All right, first one says, please talk more about how you found your way and your interests and stuff like that. Talk more about your teenage years, thoughts, and where did they end up? What had you in mind when you were younger? Oh boy, okay. So in my teenage years and younger, I really only had one thought in mind, and that was to get the fuck out of where I was. I grew up incredibly poor, like no food poor, and my family was abusive. I grew up around a lot of, the violence wasn't in my home, but there was a lot of violence in the periphery of my world. And so really my only thought was get out of there. And my life was a strange combination of strict religious rules and absolutely zero containment of me. For instance, I was expected to conform to all this religious stuff. However, no one was forcing me to do anything else. For instance, I did not go to the 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, or 9th grade because I didn't want to. Fortunately, I was able to pop right into high school, no problem, so that was good. So what I did during those 4 years instead was focus on making money, because in my mind, making money was going to be the only way I was going to get away from my situation. So what I did was I started out by I built essentially bugs. So they were called miniature long-range FM voice transmitters, and I started building those when I was 11 or 12, probably 12. And so I would build them. I rode my bike to Radio Shack, bought a bunch of electronics parts. I had a book, and I would build these electronic devices that I would then sell to people, because the elementary school that I wasn't going to was right across the street from my house. And so I would sell them to kids to mess around with and like bug their siblings' room or whatever. They didn't have a huge range, like, I don't know, maybe 100, 150 feet, but it was really cool because you could place the device in someone's room, for instance, and then you could tune to the FM radio band and listen to what was going on. Anyway, I made quite a bit of money doing that. And then I took the money that I was making from doing that and started buying old beat-up motorcycles with the condition that they would be dropped off at my house because I couldn't ride a motorcycle. I was a child. So they would drop the motorcycles off at my house. I would fix up the motorcycles, again, riding my bike to Napa or wherever to buy the parts. And then I would sell those for a profit. And I made a lot of money doing that, which I also stashed and stored. And I still stash and store money because just, I don't know, when you grow up really poor, it just seems like you do that kind of shit. You just stash money here and there. So, yeah, that's what I was doing during my teenage years. I wasn't going to school. I was doing whatever I could to make money. Anyway, so when I was maybe 14, I ended up going ahead and starting high school, maybe 15, I don't remember, 14 or 15. I started high school, and I was able to finish that early. I finished high school early. I finished it when I was 16 years old. And then after that, I went to the local community college for a couple of years, and then I was out of my teenage years. Okay. Next question, what kind of business did your wife start? So Tiff started a life coaching business where she focuses on helping people move forward rather than, a therapist or a counselor oftentimes takes people into their past and, helps them work through issues. She doesn't do that. She helps people identify the difference of where they are in life and where they want to be in life, and she helps them to get there. And she's doing a great job. It took a long 5 years. She's been working 5 years on this business, and it's finally starting to bear some fruit, which is great. She's done a great job. Her clientele is really diverse. It's people that are in a society that are on welfare, trying to get out of that situation, all the way up to clientele, including Pink's nanny and Jessica Alba's house manager. I mean, she really has her spread is huge. It's really amazing. She's doing a great job, and more importantly, she loves what she's doing. So that's always an important bonus. Okay, one more question, and then I've got to move on to other things. Okay. Great to see you back, Dade. So glad to hear that you and your family are doing well. My question is, have you discussed being trans with your children? This is something I often think about, even though I'm still very far off from having a family. Yes, so I have talked about being trans with my kids. It wasn't an easy decision to make because I don't like, even though I'm really out, I like to be out on my terms. And when you tell a child something, they're going to tell everyone. So there's that. But yeah, so my daughter Zane, she is really sophisticated and has had the ability to understand complex things from a really young age, like 2.5. So she's known that I was trans and what that means since she was 2.5 years old. And, she just had a question, like, what are the scars on your chest? And so I told her. And, what really helped us is we had the child's book, I Am Jazz, from Jazz Jennings. And that really helped because she was really into books. And so we would read it. And then, she just naturally has so many questions. She would ask, like, well, do we know anyone that is trans? And I would say, yeah, remember, I'm trans. And then that would just open up a discussion. And we just talked about it in a really normal way. Families look lots of different ways. People look lots of different ways. They're all okay. And it was literally never an issue with my daughter. My son, Talon, he is not as sophisticated yet as Zane is, but he also knows that I'm trans. And it wasn't until just recently that I told him, and I used the exact same method. We had the book, we were reading the book, and he is not big on asking questions. And so I just said, son, I'm trans. And he was like, okay. Didn't think about it. I said, do you know what that means? And he said, no. And I just told him in a very simple term, I was born with a body like your sister's, not like yours. And I decided that didn't feel right for me, so when I grew up, I changed it. And so he's totally fine with that. And, with the kids, it's the type of thing where I just bring it up. I don't hide it. I normalize it, which is exactly how I want them to feel about being trans. If I send them out into the world having a father who's hiding the fact that he's trans from them, they're going to think I'm ashamed. And if I assign shame to it, they're going to think there's a reason to be shameful. And there's not. There's not a reason for me to be ashamed or anyone else to be ashamed of being trans. And so I don't want them to have that attached to being trans. So, that's why I ultimately, in the long line of sacrifices you make in having children, I just added that one to the pile. I would have preferred to have not told them, but I did because I felt like in the long run it was the more mature way to handle things. And actually, I'm going to do one more question because then I've got one page done. What is your height and shoe size? So that's easy. I am 5'8". I wear a size between a 9 and a 9.5 shoe. I weigh 165 pounds. I have a 32-inch waist. I wear a size large shirt. Can't think of any other stats that might be interesting. This isn't really a stat, but it is interesting. My head got a lot bigger since transitioning. Like, literally, I had to get rid of all new hats. So, you didn't ask that, but now you know. All right, I will be back another time, and we will do another page of this. Okay, next question. Gabriel Ross wants to know, are you still taking an on-brand form of testosterone? Blah, blah, blah. You described switching from generic and ultimately found it more effective. So yeah, I did find the name brand testosterone much more effective than the generic testosterone. The changes seem to happen more rapidly. They seem to be more pronounced. My levels were more consistent. And interesting that you asked this, because about, 9 or 10 months ago, I switched back to generic, because the name brand is so expensive. So I switched back to the generic, and I just had my blood work done a couple weeks ago, and I haven't noticed a physical difference in switching, but my numbers were off. My testosterone was all of a sudden low out of nowhere. This just isn't my computer set up right now. My testosterone was all of a sudden low out of nowhere, and it hasn't been before. So I'm actually going to retest in 3 months while maintaining my current dose, because I've been on 160 milligrams a week for like 4 years, and there hasn't been a problem. So there may, in fact, be a very real difference between the generic and name brand. It seems to be the case. And then Gabriel had another question. Did you and Tiff work with a psychologist or therapist to help your son make the transition into the family? We tried a couple of times to work with a psychologist or therapist. The problem that we ran into is that, so we got our son from the foster care system, and I don't know why this is the case, but there were certain psychologists and therapists we had to work with because of that, and these therapists and psychologists, they all seemed to be used to working with a population that are really different than who Tiffany and I are, and so they kept trying to teach us parenting as if we'd never parented a child before, and they were assuming that we were functioning on a different level than we were. And I'm not saying there's anything magnificent about us. I'm just saying that it was more of a waste of time and less of a helpful event for us. Tiffany has lots of experience in working with youth who've experienced trauma, and so she has a large knowledge base. She had a large knowledge base to add to our experience. In addition, I am personally a youth that has experienced a large amount of trauma, and so I understand firsthand a lot of the behaviors and the root cause of behaviors that we get. And so between the two of us, I'm not going to lie, it was really, really hard, but we were able to keep it together, and I feel like we were able to help our son get through his trauma. I mean, it's obviously getting through his trauma. It's a lifelong thing. The important thing is you can't. It is daunting and it is hard. You can't let the child just bury the trauma. You have to constantly introduce the traumatic triggers, but in a small, controlled way to enable them bite-sized pieces of working through the trauma, and also bite-sized pieces of dealing with a child working through trauma. You mentioned in here that it's intriguing but daunting, and you're exactly right. It is intriguing. It is daunting, but it's worth doing. If you feel like you have the love, the patience, and the kindness to do it, do it. Our son is amazing. He's a good boy. I'm so happy we have him. And just coming from my own experience, there was every reason in my childhood for me to be taken out of my home. And I wish more than anything that somebody had and put me in a more loving home. But oftentimes people are so scared of a child who has experienced pain when it's just a child. It's just a scared child. So good for you for even thinking about it. But yes, daunting. And if you feel like you need help, I know there's lots of counselors that focus specifically on childhood trauma and can give you so many good ideas on how to help the child get through those tough emotions. All right. Next question. Jody Suppa. Do you get hit on a lot? No, I don't. In fact, in real life, like, physical life, I don't ever get hit on. I don't have anything else to say about that. I get hit on all the time on social media, but, I don't take any of that stuff seriously. So the short answer is no, hardly at all ever. Next question. Dapper Dog. It's a rad name. I love it. Wish I had thought of that. Do you still own your own business? And why did you move from the house that you and Tiff built? I do still own my own business. I have been running it since 2005. It's wildly successful, which is why I'm still doing it, even though I'd rather be doing anything else. But it's been good to me. We focus primarily on the process automation of manufacturing plants, specifically food plants. So, we design, engineer, and install essentially the large robotics and conveyance systems that make large batch food products. So that's my whole gig right now. Why did you move from the house you and Tiff built? The house that Tiffany and I built was like a 40 to 45 minute drive from civilization. And after we had Zane, it was just too much. The driving, it was constant driving. Since Zane was 6 months old, we've had her in lessons of various types. And so anything we ever needed to do meant a 40-minute drive there and a 40-minute drive back. And it just was not a good use of our time. It was too much. And, we saw in our future that there'd be more classes to go to. And the schools that we would choose were in the main part of town, 40 minutes away, the main town. And it was too much. And we're busy people. And, even though we love that house and we literally built it with our own hands, it wasn't worth it for us anymore to live there. So we purchased a different house about 35 minutes closer to town. And it's great. We love it. We wouldn't change a thing. We still think about our other house, but at this point, this house feels like home. It's good. Let's see. Becoming Jason. I also hate stagnation from work, so that'll probably be changing for me as well fairly soon. I know you like the outdoors and nature. Is there anywhere you want to go or visit on your bucket list? Where I want to go is less of a specific location and more of an environment. My family vacations tend to always be really beachy because that's what my wife likes and that's what my kids like. But for me, the ocean is beautiful, but I have sensory things, and so the loudness of the ocean, the never-ending loudness, is exhausting for me. I know this is not going to be a popular thing to say, and so I don't like going there. It's too loud. It's too hot. It's sandy. I don't like the feeling of the sand. This is really making me sound weird. So what I would like to go is into a cool, darkish, like shady, foresty area where it's really quiet. Some mild animal sounds are okay. But I would like to go somewhere that would fill me up when it comes to my energy levels. And for me to be filled up with my energy levels, I need for the barrage of outside elements of light, heat, and sound, and unnecessary skin touching to go away. If you have not guessed, I'm just slightly not neurotypical. So I would have to research, but a really quiet forest with beautiful old growth trees would be perfect for me to just spend a large amount of time at. Okay, let's see who's next here. Oh, I finished a page. My hands, I cannot turn this paper to save my life. Sorry about all the coughing. It's allergy season is so terrible right now. You just look outside and the trees, there's just poofs of pollen, like yellow clouds of sulfur floating through the air. It's ridiculous. Let's see. Lesma Sanchez. I apologize if I didn't pronounce your first name right. My question is, how hard was it for you to go back to school and make time for it between family and work, and what has been the subject you like the most? So the hardest thing about going back to school was the decision to do so. I have an incredibly hard time making any selfish decisions, or any decision that is not like a utilitarian decision, like this has to happen in order to facilitate this. And I already have a career. I have a great career. I literally can't think of a career where I can make more money as easily as I do now. And I'm not bragging. I hope I don't sound like I'm bragging. I'm just being honest. Like I'm in a good spot. And so the decision to go back to school was a completely selfish decision. I'm bored with what I'm doing. I don't like what I'm doing. And so I put literally years of work into becoming strong enough to be able to make that selfish decision. And so with me, once I make a decision, executing it and making sure it happens has never been a problem. You know, once I signed up for that first class, whether or not I was going to finish was not a question. I just made it happen. Ross, Howie, stop making so much noise. Got my dog down here making lots of noise. In case you hear grunting, it's not me, it's him. Why don't you go on somewhere else? So it was, not easy, definitely. I work to support my family. I've got kids. I pretty much just traded my sleep for it, which is why I look so much different than I am. I'm not youthful anymore, and I think that's a direct result of my the last 2 years I spent. But I oftentimes would get up, most times would get up at 4 a.m. and do schoolwork from 4 to 6, and then I would leave to work at 6:15, and I would go to work for 7 or 8 hours, and then I would come back. If I was home early enough, I would do schoolwork. But once I picked the kids up from school, or the kids got home from school, I did that. I didn't trade my family time for my schoolwork. So, if the kids sat down to do a video, I would get in half an hour of schoolwork. Or as soon as the kids go to bed, I would do schoolwork. It has been never ending. And yeah, it's really hard, but things being hard have never been a reason for me to not do them. The harder, the better. So difficult, yeah, but why not? It can either be difficult because I have no time and I'm losing sleep, or it can be difficult because I'm sitting here wishing I had done something I didn't. I'd rather have the first difficult, personally. I lost my place. Crocodile Rock, do your kids know you're trans? Do you ever plan on telling them? I answered that one already from somebody else. Okay, Jerian, did you have to go through an LGBT specific adoption agency? No, I didn't, and I couldn't, because we went through DHS, Department of Human Services, which is the agency that handles the foster kids. So going through LGBT specific one wasn't an option for us in our situation. And I don't I'm in Southern Oregon. I don't even think that sort of agency exists locally where I am. Tim Abrams. Want to ask you how you feel now that your transformation is complete. Do you feel whole as yourself? So I've never felt unwhole. I've always felt whole. I've just always felt like a whole man, and my outside didn't necessarily reflect the fact that I felt like a whole man. So it's less of a matter of me now feeling complete and whole, and more a matter of me feeling happy and content, which is a huge quality of life increase for me, and I couldn't be happier, honestly. Do a couple more and watching the clock here. Okay, Noodle Boodle. Have you ever tried geocaching? I haven't tried geocaching, but I think it sounds really fun, and I'd love to do it someday. I am waiting for the kids to get a little bit older. I think it is something I'd like to do with my kids, like you mentioned here. I think my daughter is ready for it. She's 6.5, but my son, I don't think he's quite there yet, and I'd ideally like the three of us to go do it. So that's a great suggestion, and I'm totally going to get into that someday. Let's see. Gradable? Sorry if I said that wrong. Another question, having no business training, I'm a psychotherapist. What training tools would you recommend to someone who wants to start a business? I'd like to train teachers and students, nonviolent communication, and conflict resolution in schools. That is an amazing thing to want to teach people, and good for you. That is so needed. As for business training, I didn't have any business training either, and I don't think you need any. Literally all I did to start my business was I went online and I Googled how to start a business in Oregon, and I did research. And, usually you have to register with the state. You have to figure out what type of insurance you need for your business, if any. Most businesses do need insurance, though. You need to figure out how you're going to form your business. Are you going to be a sole proprietor? Are you going to be an LLC? Are you going to be incorporated? So you have to research those types of things. You literally don't need any formal training to start up a business, only because we are living in the information age, and you can just look it up. If you are not that type of person and you don't want to do that sort of thing, I would recommend taking a business class at a community college. It won't be very expensive. They'll have lots of great local resources, as opposed to taking a class at a large university or online. A community college will have everything you need to set you up business-wise in your area. And so that would be my second choice, past just doing the online research yourself. And then also, when it comes to training students and teachers, you'd probably need to look into the continuing education requirements for trainers, for teachers and students. Not students, but teachers, more like maybe talk to the principals or superintendents of your school district and find out what qualifications you specifically need to offer these trainings in a continuing education setting for teachers. That'd be a good thing to look into, in my opinion. And then you had another question. Why was your transition an issue during the adoption process? It was an issue because people. That is the only reason it was an issue. So the way the adoption process worked through DHS, the foster care system in Oregon where I am, is you do a home study where they check out your home environment, see if you're a happy, healthy family, and included in that is you having to submit a criminal background check, submit 5 years of medical records, so on and so forth, which are all combed over. There is zero way for a trans person to hide that they're trans in their medical records, especially if you've had surgeries and if you're on testosterone. Unless you lie, they're going to know that why you're on testosterone or estrogen, depending on if you're a trans man or trans woman. So there was no way for me to hide that I was trans during the home study and with the caseworkers. And so because I couldn't hide that in the home study write-up, it was included that I was transgender. And so what happens with the process for selecting a child, when you find a child that you're interested in, you tell your caseworker, they submit your home study to that child's caseworker, and then that caseworker is the one person responsible for choosing which family gets the child. So what was happening is we were being continually not chosen. So much so, and so often, that there was no reason for me to not believe it was because I was trans. Literally, people have so much bias on the down low, even if they're not outwardly against trans people or working against trans people. If you're a caseworker and you're selecting a family for a child, if you have any bias or questions or lack of education on transgender issues, you're going to put that one aside and pick a different family. And so that's what was happening. That's why it was an issue. So I fought it and fought it and fought it. And my caseworker on Tiff and I's side was on our side, and she was a great advocate. And she helped it go forward, where we took it all the way up to the capital of Oregon, to the head of DHS in Oregon, and got me being transgender taken out of the home study. And I shit you not, within 24 hours, we were chosen for a child. So, coincidence? Maybe partly, not completely. I guarantee it. So, that's why it was an issue for us. Okay, the transmission. Thanks for the update. Interesting, blah, 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 blah. Why did you choose to disclose during the adoption process that you were trans, or did it happen by accident? So I feel like this was mostly answered already in the above questions. It wasn't a choice. I literally had no choice but to disclose it. But fortunately, even though it was disclosed, we were able to get it out of the home study. So it ended up being a non-issue. But it took a lot of work. I had to write letter after letter describing to them how it was unfair for them to force me to include it, because it was adding an element of bias that people maybe thought that people didn't know they had. I wasn't accusatory in any way, but people have bias even when they don't know they do. Myself included. We're people, we make mistakes, we have programs in our heads that we have to work through. All right. Bravest fucking toaster. Another awesome name. What do you feel are the most important things you do in your role as a father? The most important thing that I do in my role as a father is to teach my children. And I know that may sound small, but it is not, because it is mind-numbing and difficult and requires so much patience and kindness to teach a child, particularly when you're a parent. A little bit less, I would say, when you're a teacher, because your children present their best faces to the public oftentimes, and then they come home and use their parents to sharpen their faces against. That's what they need. Your home and your family is the boundaries that the children have, and that is the space in which they use to bounce all over the place and figure their world out. And so teaching your child as a parent is really difficult, because you are getting the most wild, the most creative, the most authentic version of them. And it's exhausting sometimes, but I wouldn't trade teaching my children for anything. I'm getting emotional even saying it, that, I didn't have a childhood where my parents taught me. And literally the proudest moments I have are, teaching my daughter to read, doing science with my kids. We have Science Sunday. Every Sunday we do a different science project together. I got to teach both of my kids to ride their bikes. We often sit at the dinner table talking about math problems or science problems or philosophy things, and that I wouldn't trade for anything. With my kids don't have any of my genetic makeup. Literally, the only thing I have to give them is my knowledge. And so that's what I do. That's what I try to do. Okay, guys, so I'm back for a few more questions and answers. Diving right in, this first one is from someone who identifies themselves as a 23-year-old Asian living in Singapore. And the first question is, do you have any advice on coming out to my mother and relatives? Asians have this thing about face, aka reputation. How would you suggest I go about that? Gosh, there's no easy way to come out, and of course that's amplified if you're in a homophobic country or a country that doesn't really have a high level of tolerance. And additionally, family is very important to most people, and there's really no definitive way to know how your family is going to react to coming out. With that being said, a couple things to remember when you do come out is there's nothing wrong with you. You are very right. There's no reason for you to be apologetic over coming out. And my best advice is to just be very straightforward with it. Make sure you've done some research. For instance, try to anticipate questions or arguments that they might bring up, and make sure you have answers prepared for those arguments or concerns. In my experience, families are often against a trans person for a few reasons, and it's not usually just outright hate. Oftentimes parents are worried for their children. They think that if their child is trans, they'll be bullied too much, they will not have the opportunity to be successful, or they might just be against it because they lack education. In any case, the simple passing of time, sometimes quite a bit of time, often remedies these situations. So if your family isn't immediately accepting, I don't suggest altering your course. You need to be who you are, and if you are trans, you need to take steps to be your true self. But them not being accepting doesn't mean that they're not going to be accepting. So remember that, and know that you have my support and the support of hundreds of thousands of other trans people. And then you had another question. How's it like at the doctors? Do you still have to take testosterone after a certain number of years? Do you have to explain to every new doctor? So I have to take testosterone my entire life, especially for me, since I had all my internal reproductive organs removed. I have no other source of hormones. My main source of hormones, rather, has been removed. So I have to be on hormones my entire life, or I'll go into adrenal fatigue and have other issues. So yes, you have to be on your chosen hormone for your entire life. And as for the doctors, you don't have to explain it every time. You usually, at least in this country, you have your general practitioner doctor, and they're the doctor you see for most things, and they have all of your medical records, and they obviously will know that you're trans. And for anything else, you get referred to a specialist that may or may not need to know that you're trans. It's usually a non-issue, but every doctor that has access to your medical records, there's the potential of them sifting through the entire file and finding clues to alert them to you being trans, but you don't have to tell them anything, unless it's a situation specific to your transition. Then, it'd be medically necessary to talk about that health concern. All right, moving on. Is this a question? Yes. CSS 18. My question is, what do you do for pleasure or would love to if you could? Um, so I used to do more things for pleasure prior to having children. Now most of my hobbies have been put on the back burner. But for instance, I used to dirt bike, motorcycle way up in the mountains, or I had a crotch rocket that I would zip around everywhere on. I don't do those anymore because I feel like it's too dangerous, and my kids are young, so those hobbies have went away with. I do still road cycle my mountain bike. Sometimes I backpack. I like to just hike in general, get out in the woods. On the nerdier side of things, I like to go online and enter capture the flag competitions, or go into hacking competitions where you are essentially racing to hack into a virtual machine, or practice challenges with reverse engineering, malware analysis, stenography, various things like that. I feel like I'm sounding really nerdy. So basically, what I like to do for fun is either do things out in the woods or do things online, and those are my two main sources of enjoyment. All right, next one. So this is from Rob Byers. Do you feel like you are a real man, or do you feel yourself as a trans man always? That is a really good question. And how do I answer it? I don't prepare for any of these. I don't feel like that would be authentic. So I feel like it's not necessarily one or the other, and I'll explain why. So I've always felt male, like body aside. Doesn't matter what body I was in, I always felt male. And when I was young, I felt like a boy, and now that when I grew up, I felt like a man. Even before transition, I have always been male. And so, do I identify as a man? Yes, I do identify as a man, but there is a difference in my journey. So, there are a million different ways to get to your identity, and my journey involved steps that cis men didn't have. So, I identify as a man. I am a man. I don't see any difference between me and any other man. However, my journey to becoming a man looks different from a great many men. And it's no different than, this is a great example. So it's no different than being an electrical engineer in Oregon. For instance, there are two ways to be an electrical engineer in Oregon. You can either go to a university and get a 4-year degree, and then go through internships and eventually take your PE test, your professional engineering test, and then you're a licensed electrical engineer. Or you can do things the way my company did, where go through a 5-year electrical apprenticeship, and then on top of that have an additional 4 years of engineering experience, and then take the Oregon Master Electrical Test, and then you're licensed to do electrical engineering in Oregon for your company. So same outcome, two different paths, you're still an electrical engineer. One or the other one isn't better than the other, they're different, but they lead to the same spot. So I am a trans man, but being a trans man is just a method of identifying the means of my journey to manhood. And let me just add in there that this is my opinion on the matter. Other people may have different thoughts on the difference between a trans man or man with respect to themselves. But for me, the term trans man is just an identifier as to the journey or route I took to being a man. Hope that answered the question. That one's not a question. Ooh, let's see. The Whisper Kid said, where is somewhere you'd like to travel? I feel like I answered that earlier. That was a few days ago. I don't remember. It wasn't so much a place I wanted to travel as a environment, a cool, quiet, foresty, mellow environment, namely. Let's see who's next. Anastasia S. I believe my almost 14-year-old stepdaughter is trans, but she is unsure how to tell us, and I don't want to out her. Any advice that you could give? So the reasons a child might feel unsure about coming out to you, well, first of all, she's 14. Teenagers, especially that age, they're not really big into sharing, and when they do share, it's going to be on their terms, and you have to let it be on her terms, in my opinion. When she's ready to tell you, she will. With that being said, I feel like there are things you can do to encourage her, not unlike a mother bird, prepares the nest to encourage the young birds to eventually take flight and then encourages them to go. You could seek out information or conversations or shows where you could bring up in a nonchalant way how you support trans people, or bring up a news article. Oh, did you see, like literally search for a news article, a positive news article about trans people, and bring it up in a conversation. Even if you need to enlist another family member to have the conversation with you, with an earshot of your daughter. And my point being is you need to tell her without directly telling her that you support trans people, that you respect trans people, that you think trans people are worthwhile. And that will let her know that she is in a safe environment to come out to you when she is ready. So in short, wait for her. She'll come around, provide the soft, nurturing, caring environment, and then she should, I think, naturally move into sharing with you. And as a side note, thank you, and it's awesome that you are supportive of her. It's what she needs most of all, even though she will act possibly like she could care less. Okay, moving on. Next question. Where am I? Oh, there I am. This is from Amirali Abedini. Sorry if I didn't say that right. They ask, what are some childish dreams you have? Oh gosh, this is a really hard question to answer. Mostly because I don't feel like I ever was a child. And yeah, I don't feel like I ever was a child. So it's hard to even imagine what a childish dream would be. In fact, I have no idea, to be completely honest, I have no idea how to even answer this question. So I'll just answer it the best I can, maybe just dreams I have for myself. I always wished, I continue to wish that something would come easily for me. Nothing has ever come easily for me. Everything has been a battle. Everything has been an uphill fight, and it just literally never stops being a battle. I'm pretty successful across the board, but absolutely there's not one single thing that has been handed to me or given to me. And I can't even imagine what it would feel like to have something handed to me for free without some sort of expectation, or even something handed to me with an expectation. Honestly, I've never been given anything. And so I imagine that would feel really good. I guess the dream, I guess the crux of the dream is to have a safety net for me or my life that isn't me, that I'm not the one responsible for, that I'm not the one holding up and maintaining and satisfying, that I can't even imagine how that would feel. Because I've literally always been the responsible one, and that includes from a very young childlike age. I've always been responsible. So that's an awesome dream I would have. Another childish dream, I don't know, maybe just to have a childhood. I mean, that would be awesome. I mean, across the board. I mean, when it comes to having a childhood in general, where I could do childish things and not have to be so incredibly grown up and mature so young, that would be awesome. But to also have had that, to have had a boyhood, that would have felt really awesome. You know, even though I always identified as a boy, I was a boy getting stuffed into the box of a little girl. And so I really missed out on a lot of things that I think would have been really awesome. So I would have really enjoyed having a boyhood. I know that whole answer to the question seems really deep and dark, but you know, I just don't know how to answer the question of a childish dream. I don't even know what that would be, honestly. Sorry. Let's see. Free ride 297. We have a 3-year-old son and are expecting another in July. Do you have any suggestions on how to come out to the kids? It's actually terrifying. Yes, it is terrifying. And I covered this partially in the reply to another person's question. But the main thing I have to say is do it early and don't underestimate your kids. They are really amazing. They are open, they are loving, they are kind, and they have been unaffected by society's crap. My kids have both been amazing. Like I mentioned, my kids both always really loved books. I read to them both the book by Jazz Jennings called I Am Jazz, where it talks about her being transgender. And the book is written in a really simple way. It's got pictures the kids love, and it opens up questions naturally. And for my daughter, it opened up them naturally. For my son, I had to push a little bit. And just look for ways to integrate it into everyday life. Normalize it. Don't attach shame to it. And I know it's hard because kids, they just flap off at the mouth at all the times you don't want to. You know, for instance, you know, my son, I've been talking about trans stuff with him more often as he's become more sophisticated. And he never really has anything to say about it until we're in a crowded bathroom camping. And he, all of a sudden, and there's like 4 other men in there, decides to say, "Dad, some men have vaginas and some women have penises, right?" And I'm not going to shoot him down, so you have to just go with it. It's awkward to have those conversations during times when you don't choose, but it's where we are, and you have to assign humor to it. So I had a conversation right there in the bathroom with my son about body parts and trans people, and you know, I just feel like had I not had that conversation right then, right there, I would have told him it was a shameful thing to talk about, and it's not. So my advice is, along with every other aspect of parenting, put yourself and your comforts behind, my friend. It's going to happen. So, and good luck. You'll do great. I know you will. All right, let's see. Oh, boy. Ellen Richardson. I often snicker at your comments to me. I believe the one I was just talking with you yesterday on the internet, and you were mentioning how I seemed a bit eccentric. True. And how I've rapidly aged. Also true. Anyway, do you guys still have a raging hella good sex life after all these years? Your wife is a lesbian. Did it bother her that you no longer had a vagina? So, raging good sex life? Nope, absolutely not. That all ended when we had kids. And that's just not us. That's most parents. Tiff and I are so fucking exhausted by the time that the day is over, and our life is so complex with logistics of the kids in school and the kids in classes and she's working and I'm going to school and we entertain and we have a house and we have wiener dogs and chickens and cats. I mean, no, nope, we're tired. And when we do have sex, it's usually something we have to put on the calendar. And I know that sounds terrible, but you know, you get to a certain point in your marriage or your relationship or your life, and sex is no longer the most important thing, and it can't be, and it shouldn't be. So no, I mean, when we do manage to have a scrap of energy left over for it, it's rad and it's awesome, and we love each other very much, but it's not our priority. And as for the rest about Tiff being a lesbian, you know, as Tiff's sexuality has, her understanding of her sexuality has matured, you know, it seems less like she doesn't identify as a lesbian. She identifies as a person who loves a certain type of person, and right now that person is me. I think if I were to suddenly up and die when she got over it and moved on, I think most likely her choice of person, she would probably seek a female-bodied person with an intensely masculine energy. Because she enjoys masculine energy, but she does prefer female sex organs when it comes to the person she's having sex with. Does in your other part of the question, did it bother her that you no longer have a vagina? I don't know that bother is the right terminology. Would she prefer me to have a vagina? It's really a complicated question. She would prefer, if I were happy with a female body, she'd prefer my body to be female. Would she be attracted to my body having a vagina at this point? No. I'm incredibly hairy. It would be a really hairy vagina, and she's not into that. I mean, it's complex. I mean, it's too complex to answer, and I don't think I can. You know, she loves who I am and my body in its current shape, you know, and it's not as easy as saying she'd prefer my body with a vagina or she'd prefer my body with breasts but still transitioned. It's not that easy of a question to answer. I guess it's too restrictive for her, and it puts her in a box that, quite frankly, she doesn't want to be in. The box she wants to be in is, I love my husband, Dade, in his current body and who he is. And that's the flag she flies. This next question is really similar to the last one, or along the same lines. Calparapap, I think that's your username, said, I'd be interested in your wife's perspective related to her different social role after your transition process. As far as I understand from your previous videos, your wife identifies as a lesbian. After your transition, she'll, at least to the outside world, be recognized and categorized as usual and heterosexual. So adding to there was a big strange clunk in the laundry room which I could not identify. Ghosts, maybe. So coming back to this, it doesn't bother. She's proud of our family. She's proud to walk down the street with me. She's proud to walk down the street with our 2 kids. She doesn't mind people to look at us and assume that we're a heterosexual couple. I mean, we are a heterosexual couple. What bothers her is when people assume things about her or her family structure when they don't know her and when they're not looking at us walking down the street. You know, for instance, when she meets someone and they're like, oh, what does your husband do? When they have no idea if she has a husband or wife. That irritates her. But just the fact that she's in a heterosexual relationship and she looks heteronormative, it doesn't bother her. She's proud of her, she's proud of us, she's proud of me, she's proud of our kids, our family. But in all things, she gets irritated, and I do too, frankly, at people's assumptions about people. You know, when you assume someone conforms to a certain set of standards or fits in a certain box, it's almost like you're saying that's the preferred state, and it's just not. It's not the case. And every type of family is valid and beautiful. So it's the assumption that bothers her, not the fact that she's in a relationship that appears heteronormative. Moving on. Jeremy Padovani. Do you feel your experiences as a trans man have affected the way you choose to parent? If so, how? Absolutely, but not because I'm trans specifically. I feel like being trans exposed me to a whole world of diversity that I would not have had access to otherwise. If I was just cis, I would not be at the emotionally intelligent, diverse, tolerant state I am. It has enabled me to do research. It has enabled me to have my eyes opened in so many ways that I wouldn't have otherwise. I am more advanced socially because of being trans and having to walk this path than I would have been otherwise. And I feel the opportunity has been gifted to me, honestly, because I feel like I am a better parent because of it. I can parent my children in a way that is more loving, more tolerant, more diverse, more open-minded than I would have otherwise. And so I'm thankful, and I absolutely parent differently because of it. I'm a much more I'm a better parent. That's the best way I can put it. I'm just a better parent because of it. Moving on to the next one. This is from Dina Barbosa. My question is if you have any advice on how to deal with the pressure, if any, in your case, of being the main responsible source of your family's income. It is a lot of pressure to be the main source of my family's income. It is also a pressure I've literally always had. I've always been the main source of income. And the way that I deal with it is to work really hard to save money. Because if I don't have a large amount of money saved up, I am stressed beyond belief. So I work really hard to have a nest egg. That way, if something goes wrong, because something always goes wrong, I have enough money to handle it. Or if somebody loses their job, I have enough money to carry us for enough time to get another job. So, the way I deal with the pressure is to work hard to minimize the pressure by making sure I always have a backup plan. I always have a backup nest egg. And I don't take things for granted. I save money where I can. And, that old saying, a penny saved is a penny earned, is so incredibly true. It's really true. It's so easy to spend too much money, and it's so easy to live outside your means. And just because you have enough money to buy something doesn't mean you need it. It doesn't mean you should buy it. I by no means live a minimalist lifestyle, and there are so many ways I'm actively trying to be more minimalist. But it's a work in progress, and it's tricky when you want to give your family everything you didn't have. But as for the pressure, I just do my best to live well below my means because I have plenty and my family has plenty without spending every last cent we have. The next question is from Julius. I'd be interested to hear about the time when you and Tiff decided to have the first child. How'd you handle the different options of her getting pregnant? What was your decision-making process like? And what are your thoughts on not being the biological father? So Tiff and I getting pregnant, or the decision to have a baby rather, was kind of a fluke. We were on vacation in Tahoe, and we were in the hot tub, and Tiff asked if I wanted to have kids, and I said no, but I feel like I would regret not having kids. And then she thought about that, and she said, oh. And then all of a sudden, we were trying to have kids. So she really wanted to carry the baby. I had no interest in carrying the baby and had every intention of having a complete hysterectomy, and I don't know how to pronounce oophorectomy. Let's just go with that. So I didn't want to carry the baby. So we always knew that she would carry the baby. I also just had zero interest in saving my eggs or continuing my line. And I know that sounds terrible, but I didn't want to continue my line on. In some ways, it makes me sad that everything will end with me. But there's just not a lot of good genes in my family, and they're in me. They're in me too. And I didn't want to continue. I don't see any reason to continue my family on. My family has a lot of really bad, terrible people in it. So Tiff was always going to carry the child, So what I did do was go online and choose a sperm donor who seemed a lot like me, and then we did IVF and had Tiff inseminated, and it took 7 tries, but she eventually did become pregnant with our wonderful daughter Zane. So there was that weird clunk again. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to go check it out. I'll be right back. Still have no idea what that clunk was. So just to finish up the answer to your question, the decision to not continue on biologically, I feel like I have more peace with it because it was actually a choice that I made. I know it's really difficult for a lot of people to have the thought of not continuing their own genes on. And there's lots of things you can do. You can save your eggs, harvest your eggs if you're a trans man, and use those eggs at another time. You could birth the baby yourself. If you're a trans woman, you can, use have a woman carry the child for you and use your sperm. There's a lot of ways that you can continue it on if that's something that's important to you. Okay, next question is from Mac Derp. As a 37-year-old, can you still jump over the half wall? I have no idea. Shall we find out? Yes. Though I might need to take some Advil later. So this next question is such a doozy. I actually had to pause the video and think about it for a minute, but in the end I decided that I'll just go ahead and be authentic and answer it, even though you all probably think I'm batshit crazy afterwards, but it's alright. Half of you probably do already. So this question is from Jeff T. Can you describe the higher power you've held on to during this process of transitioning? No, I can't, because I don't believe in a higher power, and there's nowhere that I draw my strength from other than from within myself. Not only do I not believe in a higher power, I don't even believe in this place. This place being this earth, this society, this game that we're all playing. None of it makes sense. There's no logic behind it. Humans are both loving, kind, hateful, greedy. We can save people's lives and self-sacrifice everything, or we can slaughter people for no reason. We can flip a coin and decide what we're going to do. We're unpredictable. We don't make sense. This place doesn't make sense, and I don't think it's real. And I think, first of all, anybody that believes in God or a higher power, believe in it. I don't make fun of you for it. I think everyone deserves to believe what they want to believe. I don't believe in it. And in my opinion, the belief in a religion or a higher power, it just all plays into this same game that we're playing. And, honestly, my thought is that, and this is the part where you're going to think I'm batshit crazy. I think that we're all living in a simulation, and I'm not joking. That's my belief in the matter. we as humans are developing so incredibly quickly that we can also already run simulations of various types, very low-level simulations. There's no reason to believe that in the future we can't run simulations that are more complex, so why would we believe that these more complex simulations aren't already being run? I think that we're all in a test lab. I think we're an experiment. Maybe we're in an alien internment camp. I don't know. All I know is that all of us are really fucked up. And as good as some of us are, we are equally as bad. Each and every one of us. I have been bad. I have been terrible. I have been hateful. And now I'm not. I'm not going to get into any more complexities about my way of thinking. But, there's been no higher power in my transition or in my life. Everything that I have fought for and everything I've achieved has come from a power inside my own mind. And I'm relentless with that. I will not stop until I achieve what I want. I know a lot of people draw power from various sources, and I'm glad you do, but I don't. Hope that answers your question, and hope you stay subscribed. Next question from CGO. How different was it to come out as trans other than it felt when you came out as a lesbian? So I didn't really come out as a lesbian. So the way it went for me is I was, cis looking and in a hetero looking relationship. I was married. Prior to Tiffany, I was married to a guy. We were married for almost 8 years. And when that marriage dissolved at the same time that I left my religion and I left my family and literally left everything. And that's also the time frame in which I started to date women. And so I didn't have to come out as lesbian because I just walked away from this life and popped into this life. And there was no one to come out to. Everybody I met was new. And so it was more like, oh, this was me and now this is me. And so being trans was really, the first time I had to come out for the most part. And it was as awful as you would imagine coming out is. It was really hard. My wife didn't want to be with a trans man. She wanted to be with a woman. My work situation was hell. It was all hard, but it was the only coming out I've ever had to do. So I don't really have a comparison for it, I guess, between that and coming out as a lesbian. Hey guys, so back to the Q&A. The next one I have on the list is from Marmalade Atkins, and they say that they're trying to go from a 3-person family to 4. What tips can you give us to navigate that? That's tricky to answer because there are so many more variables than, simply going from 3 to 4. The difficulties are, the challenges and joys, the whole thing is different depending on whether or not the 4th person is a baby being born into the family, a child getting adopted, the age of the child getting adopted, and then every child is different, and so it's hard to give any specific advice because your family quite possibly could look completely different from my family. So I'll give some really general advice at the top of that being you're going to have to be incredibly patient and kind because anytime you change your family structure, it's difficult. It's not easy. Integrating an additional person, it changes the entire family dynamic. And every single person in that family now has an added role, whether it's you going from a parent of 1 child to a parent of 2 children, or your current child going from an only child to big brother or big sister, little brother, little sister, whatever. It changes everything. And, like anything else, I have to say there's a line that Tiff and I use all the time when it comes to parenting, just in general. And literally, it's what gets us through. And it's that every time a challenge manifests itself and comes forth, we just remind each other that it's temporary, because it is. Every single thing that you do while parenting is temporary. Your kid is going to go through a phase of doing one terrible thing or one awesome thing, and then just like that, that's going to be gone, and it's going to be on to something else. So while you're in the really difficult phases, remember that it's temporary, and when you're in the really awesome phases, just do your best to enjoy it. It all goes by really fast, and it's so dynamic, and it's so tricky, especially with a second child. When you're used to just having one child, the amount of variables of what could go wrong, it increases so dramatically because every child is so different, and they each want your undivided attention. And so it's really hard to keep a balance, but you can do it. It will be tricky at first, but I have no doubt you'll catch on and you'll do awesome. So good luck with that. I wish you the best. Let's see. This one is from Adrian Robinson. Having a hard time getting someone to answer the question. I've tried multiple STPs, none of them work unless I drop my pants completely. Bathroom dysphoria is worse. This is part of the reason I decided to have bottom surgery. Yes, and my experience was the same, my friend. Standing to pee was really important to me for a lot of reasons. And, whether or not it's important to you, it's a personal thing. So don't let anyone down you for that being important to you. Some people don't care. I did. Sounds like you do. So it's a thing. Like you, I tried lots of STPs, and I couldn't get any of them to work consistently. And even when I did get a relatively consistent use of them, where I didn't have to drop my pants, there would be backflow problems, or there would be urine left in the STP, and I don't want to walk around with piss in my pants. I mean, that didn't feel good to me. I don't think it would feel good to anyone, honestly. So I don't have any advice to give you on a better STP to use. I've also been out of the STP market for, 4 or 5 years. So if any of you watching this video have any recommendations, please, any more up-to-date recommendations, please share them in the comments for this person, because I'd love to do more to help, because it's a really frustrating thing to unload hundreds and hundreds of dollars on devices just so you can have some peace of mind in the bathroom, and then experience the never-ending frustration of them not taking care of the job. With that being said, that is one of the main reasons I chose to have bottom surgery, is because I wanted to stand to pee. I hike, I backpack, I do lots of things where dropping my drawers to take a piss, it's not convenient, it doesn't work for me, and, for some of us, being able to stand to pee, it's a life changer. So I hope you find the device that will work for you, or I hope you find some other way to achieve your goals, because I understand and I have nothing but empathy for you. It's a really frustrating situation, my friend. Okay, this one is from Image123. Image123. Do I still notice the differences in everyday life now that I'm treated as a man, and how then as compared to when I was treated as a woman? Do I feel that testosterone has changed me as a person? Do you have any ideas or experiences on how trans men could support cis women in everyday life? So, yeah, there's a stark difference between how I'm treated as a man walking in society and how I was treated as a person visually appearing to be a woman in society, and it pisses me off, to be honest. I'm given automatic respect I was never given before. I'm also held to a different standard with men. So even though I'm given automatic respect with men, if I don't perform, they seek to crush you and belittle you and demean you for it, which when I was in the world as a woman, I didn't get the automatic respect, but there was also virtually no consequences for me when I failed, because it's almost like they didn't expect anything from me. The whole thing is crap, and I feel terrible even having to say it. It's wrong, but that was my experience. So, how I'm treated is differently by men. I'm also treated really differently by women, and how I'm treated by women, it breaks my heart, to tell you the truth. The women that I know treat me fine. Obviously, a couple negative things that have happened. I've noticed that older women oftentimes are incredibly just jaded against men, young men in particular, and they treat me really poorly in situations for no reason, as if they, and I don't fault them for it. It almost seems like they've put up with a lifetime of crap from men, and they're just done with it. And here I am, a young, strong-looking man, walking in, doing nothing wrong, but, I'm the face of my species, my gender, and they're tired of it. And so I get a lot of poor treatment for no reason from older women. That doesn't so much break my heart. It bothers me, but what really breaks my heart is the response I get from women when I'm hiking alone. I do a lot of hiking up in the mountains, the trails, and it's, it can be relatively isolated. And when I come across a woman, when I would come across a woman on the trail when I had a female body, there would be eye contact, there would be a smile, there would be no wide berth given. But when I run across a woman on the trail now, I don't feel like I look threatening, I don't act threatening, but, we have created a society where women have to fear men constantly. And so I come across a woman on the trail, like her stride, it stops or it alters as she takes notice of me. She either gets off the trail completely or gives me a wide berth or just zips past me with no eye contact. And guys, this is the world as men that we have created for women, and it is terrible and it is wrong. Just my presence on the trail has ruined the peace for that woman because of how men have treated women. And so, when it comes to trans men aiding cis women, I feel like all we can do is, well, first of all, accept the burden of the poor treatment we get from women, because this is the bed that men have made, and we now have a duty to sleep in it. So buck up, little trooper, take it. The other thing is, listen to women when they speak of these things. Accept and validate their words when they talk about being scared or being frightened. And as a trans man, and especially as those of us trans men who present incredibly binary and are accepted completely into male spaces, stand up for what is right. Don't accept the privilege. Reject the privilege of being included in toxic male conversations. Reject that and be willing to stand up for it, even if that means you are rejected from the circle you have so keenly worked to get into. Because you know what, guys? We don't want those circles. You don't want those circles. That's not fair to yourself and your integrity, and it's not fair to the women that we share this planet with. We need to create a new space, a new circle of men that is a place that is safe that creates a planet that is safe for women. And I think that was all of your questions. Hope you had one more up here. Do you feel like the differences in behavior are greatly exaggerated between men and women and are more of a social construct? Um, tricky. I think some differences are a social construct. I feel like a lot of masculinity is a social construct. The toxic parts of masculinity. With that being said, I feel like I do feel like there are differences between men and women, at least men and women who feel very binary in that. I do feel like there are differences, and people tend to feel more comfortable doing one set of things than another set of things. With that being said, I don't feel like anyone should be thrown into a box of how they have to act or how they have to behave. And I feel like that's where the social constructs need to come down. You know, like for instance, my son, Talon, he presents incredibly masculine. He just fits into every boy stereotype you can imagine, but the boy likes wearing tutus. We let him wear tutus. And I know that he's going to get out there in the world and they're going to squash that. And my point being, that's where the societal pressure comes into play. So whereas I do think there are differences between men and women, I also feel like societal pressure to adhere to a certain set of stereotypes is also very present. Okay, so this next question is from Solo Un Polizon G. Sorry if I slaughtered that screen name. Question is, in your country to adopt, is it a requirement to inform that you are FTM? Did you have to do it? So I've answered this in previous questions. It was not an outright requirement to say I was trans, but the process of application made it impossible to hide it because they request my medical records. Next one is from Christopher Forder. Let's see, where's the question? What is mine and Tiff's favorite things to do with our downtime? Oh gosh, I talked a little bit about what I like to do with my downtime, but Tiff and I together, we don't get a lot of downtime together. We're so busy right now. When we do have downtime, we often like to just sit in silence while she drinks a glass of wine and I have a beer. We do cycle together, which is nice, or hike together. But at this point in our lives, when it comes to downtime, gosh, man, we just don't have any. But when given the choice of spending time together, it usually involves some sort of athletic activity. She loves working out. It really fills her. I don't love working out, but I don't like being unfit. So those two things together result in us usually doing something active together. You had a few questions. Are you both on Zane's birth certificate? How did it work in your state? I am on Zane's birth certificate, so is Tiff. It was ridiculously easy. I was there when Tiffany had the baby, and they brought me in the birth certificate to sign. There was 0 questions asked. I was prepared for a battle. There was no battle. I'm on the birth certificate as the father, and there was no questions asked about it. So that was an easy thing. And I'm also, well, I'll go into that later. No, I won't go into that. How does Tiff feel about being in a heterosexual relationship? I spoke about this in a separate answer. The short answer here being she loves our family, and she has no shame in presenting as in a heterosexual relationship. But she doesn't like it when people assume that, not knowing the structure of our family, which I don't blame her. Assumptions, there's just no need for them. If I could choose any career to change to, what would that be? So my dream career would be to be a penetration tester, where I use various hacking exploits or social engineering to break into people's computer systems for hire and output them a report of their vulnerabilities and give them ideas on how to better secure their network. And part of the reason I like that is because I like going places where I shouldn't be. I like solving complex problems, and I like working from home in my underwear. So all of those things would be a bonus. What is my favorite food to eat? Oh, gosh. Oh, God. I just don't know, man. I eat anything. I can't answer that question. My favorite food to eat, I like to eat a lot. My favorite food to eat is the food item that is in front of me. That's my favorite food to eat. Boy, you've got a lot of questions, Chris. Why was it more difficult in the adoption process for your son? Why was it more difficult? Okay, answered that already. It was only difficult because we were getting bypassed because of people's internal bias against trans people. So, the adoption, he wants to know if the adoption is open or closed, and will you explain to your son? The adoption, it's tricky. My son's parents, he was in the foster care system, so the parents don't have it together. We did choose to enact a open mediation agreement between us and one of the parents. The mediation being we agree to send updates on our son, and the parent can send letters, but there's nothing about meeting. The parent doesn't know where we are. There's no way to trace us. And we absolutely plan on telling Talon his story. We already are in bits and pieces. We're not going to hide it from him. That wouldn't feel good to us. Okay, I'm back. I had to zip off and do something real quick. So we were talking about whether or not I was going to explain to my son about his adoption in the future. And I pretty much covered what I wanted to say, but yes, I am. I don't feel like it's right or fair to hide any part of his story from him. I feel like hiding it would attach shame to it, not unlike me feeling like hiding me being trans would be assigning shame to that. And there's nothing shameful about these stories. We all have different stories, different lives, and they look a lot of different ways. There is every reason for him to be curious about his biological makeup, and I actually have information stored and that I gather regularly for both of my kids when it comes to their biological makeup. So when they start asking questions or when they're ready, I will share it with them. Was that your last question? Do I worry about my son's traumatic background affecting him? Of course I do. Traumatic backgrounds are hard, and it's a lot of work to get around them. Trust me, I know from personal experience. But just like with any child, all you can do is give them the most loving and supportive environment that you can, and they're going to be who they're going to be, and I feel like, the bringing it to myself, the traumatic background that I experienced personally gave me every reason in life to not be successful, and many people who had similar backgrounds aren't successful, and many people that have had worse backgrounds than me are even more successful. It's so hard to know how background is going to affect a certain person. So, I don't spend a lot of time fretting and worrying about how my son's background is going to affect him. I spend much more time worrying and fretting about how I can be the best father possible to this little boy, so I can give him every tool and every chance necessary to be successful regardless of the difficulties of his start in life. Okay, I think I got all of yours. Oh, one more. Plans for vacation this year? No further plans for vacation. We just got back from Mexico a couple months ago. We were there for a couple weeks. That was awesome. And we don't have plans for any other big vacation, though we usually go on vacation in February. We go to Tahoe every fall, so we'll do that and some small camping trips, but nothing too big yet. I'm sure Tiff will find something. She loves going on vacation, and she usually plans them and throws them on me. So, okay, let's see. The next one is from Henry the Hobbit. My question for you is everything fine in your family? And how did your daughter feel about her new sibling? Everything's great in my family. We, like I've mentioned, we're really busy, but we're holding it all together. Tiff and I, for the most part, our feelings on parenting align. And so that really helps keep the family smoothed out. We like to handle problems the same way. We like to handle joys the same way. So that makes things smooth. Tiff and I are matched really well when it comes to parenting, which is it's great. It makes things a lot easier. As for my daughter and her new little brother, at this point it's been a year and a half, and it was a really hard year and a half for everyone, and it was definitely a hard adjustment for her to make. She had been an only child for almost 5 years, and the only grandchild for almost 5 years. And so splitting up the attention, it was hard for her. Tiffany and I worked diligently to make sure that she had special time with just me, special time with just Tiff, special time with just her grandparents, to help soften the integration. But Zane, she's so smart, she's so sophisticated, and I feel like that really helped with the integration. So between her just being the amazing little person she is, and me and Tiff working tirelessly to make sure she still got everything she needed, it's been good, and she's doing really well. And at this point, both of the kids, they just act like they've been siblings their entire life, which is as it should be. And this next one is from Merlin DePeel. If you could go back in time and speak with that young person about to receive the first shot of testosterone, what would you counsel from that person? Once a person gets to the point where they're actually taking their first T-shot, I feel like, the hardest part is done. And I say that because nobody jumps into this without knowing the difficulties they're going to face. They've most likely already come out to people. They've most likely already received the issues that come from coming out. And so, the hardest step is already done. Speaking from a trans man specific point of view, my biggest advice to a trans man beginning his transition, young or not, is that you're really going to have to work hard and check yourself on not accepting the toxic portions of masculinity, because it's as much as people talk against toxic masculinity, it is also pushed upon men. Men are pushed to be all-knowing, all strong, all resilient, non-emotional. The toxic masculinity, it didn't come from nowhere, and it's extremely prolific. And so my challenge to you and my advice to you is, first of all, be you. Be whoever you are. And don't prescribe to whatever someone else tells you your masculinity should look like, because they will. They will, especially since you're transitioning, they will try to make you feel not man enough. Well, there is no such thing as not man enough. You are a man in your own right, no matter how that looks. And you need to keep that in mind. Seek out role models who are not pushing toxic forms of masculinity. Seek out role models who aren't trying to gain power by taking power. Look for people who are leaders as opposed to bosses or tyrants. And I know that all sounds incredibly simplistic, but it's not. Because one of the reasons toxic masculinity is so rampant is because people respect it. And I don't want you to add to that bunch. Don't add to that bunch. Don't add to that. We need to tear down the respect of toxic masculinity. Don't respond to toxic masculinity. So I guess that would be my advice. And other than that, don't forget to experience the joy. Enjoy your puberty. It's fun. It's awesome. If you're like me, you waited much too long for it to finally happen. So I don't know if this is about you specifically, but if it is, congratulations. You're going to have the time of your life, and I wish you the best. And I've got to go pick my son up from school now. So I'll get back to this later. Bye. Okay, back for a couple more questions. The next one we are on is Welcome to My Head. And their question is, I'd like to know what you feel is the most difficult part of socially transitioning. So, and a couple of things you mentioned here is going into the men's bathroom or at work. So I didn't really ever have trouble going into the men's bathroom. I always appeared pretty masculine, and so I just didn't give a second thought about it. I just used the bathroom and didn't make eye contact and did my business. But with transition, the most difficult part was definitely work. I don't work for someone necessarily. I have my own company, but I do the majority of my work for one particular client. And the relationship was such that, I felt like I had to come out to that client to let them know what was going on. Because I find myself in lots of meetings with this client, and it's not the sort of thing that would go unnoticed, So that portion of socially transitioning at work, I handled via email, honestly. I just sent out an email, a global email, and attached everyone to it that needed to be attached, explained the situation, told them that my work performance wouldn't change, the company structure isn't changing, nothing's different, but this is what I'm doing. And the receiving of it was pretty good. About half the people didn't respond at all and never ever wanted to talk about it with me, which was fine. The other half responded, which was nice, and showed their support or whatever. Beyond that, the pool of people I work with directly is probably a couple hundred people, and there was a lot of really awkward situations, because you come out as trans and you say you're transitioning, but then everybody looks at you and you still sound and look like a girl, at least in the beginning. And so it's really hard. It's tricky because you have all these expectations of people to use different pronouns and to make these changes, but when they look at you, you look the same. And so it's awkward. It's super awkward. People do the best they can. Eventually it all smooths out. It did for me for the most part. The only area that was a really long-term thorn in my flesh was with the people at my own company. One person in particular at my own company, which is not a person that I could get rid of in my company, just had me in a box that they wanted me to stay in, and they caused so many problems, just really did everything they could to make my life a living hell. And they did. They made my life a living hell. And if there was anything I could have done to get out of the company, I would have. But, in my situation, I'm the sole provider of the family, at least I was at that point. And there was nothing I could do but just deal with it and take it. Advice to give anyone that has to come out at work, the easier option, of course, is to get a different job, but most of us can't do that. And so I would just be very direct with people, and don't be apologetic. You're not doing anything wrong. And also remember that you have to give people time to time to change the box that they have you in. Give them their mind has to make changes in it, and you can't underestimate the difficulty of that. I don't know why it's so hard, but it is. So, if you have people that are really trying but they make mistakes, don't jump them about it. Be patient, give them time, remind them, stand your ground, but also be patient and give them time, and hopefully they'll come around. Next question is from Zandorv. Do I plan on returning to my series about conflict resolution at any point? I guess I felt like I was done with that series on conflict resolution, but I'm totally open to doing more on it. If you have any specific ideas about things that you'd like my thoughts on, feel free to comment on here or message me. I'd be happy to talk about it more. But from my own personal viewpoint, I kind of felt like I had wrapped that up. Next question from La Gior. Again, so sorry if I'm ruining your screen names. Their question is, are you interested in doing something with physics and math? Because I've heard you mentioning it. So I love physics. I love math. I use math every single day for work, and I really enjoy it. Physics as well. I love figuring out how things work and why they work and thinking about that. But as for doing anything with them specifically when it comes to like a career, I don't. I don't feel like I'm not smart. I don't feel like I'm smart enough to do something with physics and math that could be lucrative. So, where I am, I get to dabble in physics and dabble in math and still make a decent living. But, I'm never going to change my career to be a mathematician or a physicist, though that would be really fun. Maybe in another lifetime, when it's just me to take care of, I could do something like that. But for now, nope. I am where I am. Okay, the next question is... Oh, well, I got to go back and get a better screenshot of this one. I cut you off. I'll be back to you. Let's see. This one is from Sherry226. Their question is, do I miss my family? Do I ever consider reaching out to them? Talking about my family is tricky because I feel like people don't understand me not missing my family. So to answer your question, no, I don't miss my family. My family, for the most part, never really provided me anything. I mean, emotionally, they didn't fill anything for me. And so having to walk away from them because of that, it wasn't as hard as it would have been for someone who had a closer relationship with their family. And as for reaching out to them, I don't really have any plans on reaching out to them. I've mentioned this. My family, they are all Jehovah's Witnesses. And when you leave that religion, you are disowned from your family. They won't talk to me. They won't accept me reaching out to them. I know this for a fact. And I also know that if they ever decide to leave the religion, that would be the point in which they would reach out to me and let me know. But past that, as someone who was in the religion until I was 25 years old, I know how people in the religion view those who leave the faith. And I know definitively that if I were to reach out to them, there would be nothing. So there's no point in doing so. And to be completely honest, most members of my family, I don't want to say most members, there are individuals in my family who are good people, but I still don't have much contact with them, if any. But a large majority of them are really, it's a toxic situation, and I don't want that integrated in my current family. I don't have any reason to want to introduce my kids to most of the people in my family. I just feel like it would be a hurtful situation. And honestly, it's embarrassing to me to come from the hateful background I come from. It's embarrassing. And I don't have a desire to be involved in that again. I mean, if they reached out to me, I wouldn't shoot them down. I'm not holding a grudge, but I'm not going to put myself in a situation for hurt by reaching out to them. The last thing I heard from my mother is that she thinks I'm disgusting and abhorrent. So, I mean, there's no reaching out to a person in that situation. Okay. Dion Vasmir wants to know how I chose my name. This is an embarrassing story. For a couple of reasons, a few reasons. I didn't put much thought into my name. I named myself after a movie character of a really nerdy movie. And the third reason is that to tell you the story, I have to tell you my birth name, which is also embarrassing, but it's okay. So the story of how I changed my name, chose my name and changed it. I actually chose and changed my name before I had even considered transitioning. I had met Tiffany, my wife, and we were dating, and it was going well enough that we were doing a lot of hanging out and a lot of, hanging out with our group of friends, and it was great. But if there's anything about me, I don't like attention being drawn to myself, especially if it's about something specific to me. And the issue was, I'm getting embarrassed even saying it, the issue is that my name was the same as my wife's name. My name was Tiffany. And so every conversation, anytime we met anyone, it was always like, oh my gosh, you guys, your names are the same, ha ha ha. And then there was all these nicknames that came up about us, like TNT. And I know it was all in fun, but I don't like attention being drawn to myself. So I decided, since it seemed like me and Tiff were, our relationship was turning into more of a long-term thing, I decided I was going to change my name. And so Tiff and I were upstairs drinking one night and just hanging out, and I was lamenting about how much I hated having the same name. And one of us, I don't even know who it was, thought, well, why don't you just change it? And I thought, yes, I will just change it. I've never liked my name anyway, for me. So we were, looking through name books, blah, blah, blah. And, it was tricky because I hadn't transitioned. And so I couldn't have a name that was especially binary. And so I decided to pick a name that I'd never heard before except in one place. And that is in my favorite movie called Hackers. So the main character of the movie Hackers, it was a movie that came out in like 1997. And the main character's name was Dade. And so that's where I got my name. I mean, and just another element of embarrassment about me choosing that name is because I'm a hacker as well. That's what I do for fun in my free time. I literally have a degree in it. I'm starting graduate school in September to learn more about being a hacker, and so it's really embarrassing. In fact, like I have a LinkedIn profile where I do all my work stuff, and I use a different name on that because I can't be floating around the hacker community with the first name of a hacker from a 1997 movie. It's just so lame and so embarrassing. But I'm also lazy about doing things that don't have to be done, and my name doesn't have to be changed. It's fine. I've already got 10 years of history under that name, and so I'm not going to change it, but it's also a little embarrassing to me. I didn't put any thought into it. There it is. My name is Dade. All right, that's all the time I have for right now. I've got to go on to different things, but I'll get back with you. I think I've only got one page of questions left. Okay, we are down to the last page of questions officially. This is going to be a long video. All right, this one is from Counting Sapiens. And they want to know, how is it not only being an older trans YouTuber, but also one of the few public trans guys who are in STEM when the vast majority are in activism or arts as a career? I still have yet to find many of us who are engineers. Yeah, and I remember talking to you about this a little bit when we were in Philly a couple years ago. But starting with your first one, how's it being an older trans YouTuber? Honestly, it feels a little bit funny. It seems like YouTube is kind of a young person's game. And so I feel, honestly, I feel like I'm a little outdated. But as you can see, it's not stopping me from putting my content up here. I didn't even start putting videos up until I was 29 years old, and that was 8 years ago. So it's been a long time. I guess the base of the matter is that as long as I feel relevant and feel like my videos are useful to a group of people, I'm gonna keep making them. When I first put my YouTube videos up, or my first video up, I never expected anybody to watch it. I didn't expect them to be popular or to have any sort of following. And so I don't really, check my numbers and check my views and check my subscribers, because it's never really been about that for me. So the fact that I don't have a huge following at this point, it doesn't bother me. I feel like, if my videos are helpful to a few people, then that's literally all I ever wanted. So it's still good enough for me. So it doesn't really bother me. I do feel bad sometimes that, I don't have time to put out content with as high a quality as I would like to. As I've become older, I've become exponentially more busy, and my free time is so scarce. I'm not able to put out content like a lot of other people are able to, where their videos are better edited, fancier, have more bells and whistles. Mine are just pretty basic. But like I said, if I feel relevant, I will continue to put these out here. As for the lack of trans guys in STEM, I also, like you, have noticed that there seems to be a large amount of trans guys in the arts or activism as opposed to engineering. And, honestly, I feel like a large part of that is socialization. There's also a scarcity of women in STEM. And I feel like socialization has so much to do with that. There's studies out there that by the time a girl is in third grade, her love of science and math has been sufficiently stifled by society that their self-esteem plummets when it comes to those subjects, and they stop trying. Not because they don't have the capacity for it, but because society likes to squash the hopes and dreams of young girls. And many trans men have started out their life in the body and the social roles of a young girl. And there's certainly a lack of encouragement for girls to get into engineering fields. So I think a lot of trans men carry those things with them even after they transition, or maybe by the time they transition, they've already moved into a career other than an engineering or a STEM-related career. All we can do is work hard to, women's issues. If we fix women's issues, we fix so many things. The society has oppressed women for so long, and it's literally been the slowest thing to change. If we can fix how we treat women, we literally fix so many things, and in my opinion, including the lack of trans men in engineering and STEM. So I hope that answers your question. And like you, I would love nothing more than to have more trans people around me that are in STEM. I'm fortunate to have a couple in my life, which is awesome, because when I hang out with them, I can actually talk about sciencey and nerdy things, which is rad. All right, moving on. This one is from Lynn Nation. How difficult is electrical engineering? Another one about engineering. Electrical engineering. I'm 20 and want to study it, but I'm poor at math. So, I hear so many people say they're poor at math, and guess what? You're not. Math is hard for almost everyone. There's a tiny little portion of the population that is naturally good at math. Because to be successful at math, you literally have to change the way your mind thinks. And math is a different language. It's intimidating, and unlike learning an actual language where if you don't get the sentence exactly right, people can kind of figure out what you're saying, math is so very right or so very wrong. And so because of that, I think a lot of people are intimidated by it, or a lot of people feel like they're not good at it, and it's just not true. Math has to be conquered in a very specific way. And I'll give you a couple of tips when it comes to math. First of all, stop telling yourself you're bad at math. Math is hard. It's not that you're bad at it, it's that it's hard. And, just the mere fact that something is hard shouldn't deter you from attacking it. So try to have the mind frame of, instead of telling yourself, I'm not good at it, say, this is going to be hard, but I can do it. Because that is where it actually is, my friend. You can do it. I know you can. We all can. It's hard, like I said. So a couple of tips. So don't give up your dreams of being an engineer just because of the math. There is a lot of math in engineering, but the way you attack it can really help you out. And I'll give you some tips. So first of all, for a 4-year engineering degree, there's a couple of things you can do. You can go to a 4-year university and do the whole thing there, which is fine. Or you can do your first 2 years at a community college, including the math, and then move up to university for your electrical engineering specific classes. And I'm recommending the second option for so many reasons. First of all, community colleges are less expensive than universities. You'll pay probably half as much or a third as much for community college classes than you will for university classes. And as long as you make sure that your classes are transferable to your university, most of them have articulation agreements that you can look into, you're going to pay so much less. So that's the one advantage of going to a community college. The second advantage is that community colleges are smaller. The professors tend to be less arrogant and more helpful than university professors. And so they'll spend more time with you and provide you more resources to help you get through the math classes. And honestly, there's the big three that you have to do for engineering, and it's math through Calc 3. You've got to take the triple chemistry set, and you've got to take the triple physics set. Most of which you could take at any community college, and I suggest taking those at the community college. And the third reason I suggest you take those at the community college is because the Calc series, the physics series, and the chemistry series are notorious for being weed-out classes. And if you don't know what a weed-out class is, it is a class specifically designed by the institution to weed out people not willing to work hard enough to get an engineering degree, because engineering is hard. And so if you take those classes at a university, there is a much higher likelihood the class will be a weed-out class designed to break you, as opposed to a community college. If you're taking it there, the assumption tends to be, oh, these are your classes that are capping it off. And so it's a lot less likely that they'll be formatted in a weed-out way. And so you'll have more help. The professors will be more lenient, more willing to give you advice, possibly grade you on a curve, and the class articulates to university. And when it comes to math specific, I can't express enough how important it is that you learn your fractions really well, because if you don't learn fractions really well, you're not going to learn algebra really, really well. And if you don't learn algebra really well, you're going to have a terrible time in pre-calc, and you're going to have a terrible time in calculus. Algebra is really important. So take your math class. If you don't have a good foundation in math now, don't be ashamed to go back a class and make sure you have a really good foundation. Literally, math, learning your math well and taking your time with it will serve you throughout your entire engineering degree or any STEM degree in general. So take your time with it. You're not in a hurry. Most people don't usually take 4 years for an engineering degree. They usually take 5 or 6 years. So just settle into it, and don't give yourself failure as an option. It's going to be hard, but you can either suffer because it's hard and have an engineering degree, or you can suffer because you didn't get the degree you wanted and you feel like you aren't as accomplished as you wanted to be. So either way, there's going to be suffering. You may as well suffer through the difficult classes and come out with what you want instead of suffer for beating yourself up for not pursuing what you really wanted. And just as one more quick tip, there's an awesome website called Symbolab, and there's a free version of that where you can do so many things. It's an equation editor and solver. So if you're doing your homework or you're having trouble understanding a concept, you literally can put it into Symbolab, and they will give you pages of output step by step on how the problem was solved. So you can, if you're stuck on a certain problem, you don't have to wait for someone to answer your question. You literally have your own resource right there online where you can look it up and get it figured out. Other than that, dude, just go for it. Go for it. Don't let being scared of something being hard keep you from doing it. You don't need to be scared. Just realize it's going to be hard and prepare yourself for that, and you're going to do fine. You'll be fine. You'll do good. Okay, next one is from Harry. Where's your question? In your video you mentioned your support network. Would you say your support group is mostly LGBT folk or simply people? Okay. So support groups, so when I mention support groups, I guess I mention support more for my family. TIFF is more of an extrovert and an external processor, so she likes to go outside of herself for support. And when it comes to me emotionally, I don't seek support outside myself, really ever. Maybe once or twice. So when it comes to that, I don't seek support. I don't have a support group personally when it comes to that. I have, friends that I like to hang out with now and then. And when it comes to those friends being LGBTQ, I have an array. Some of my friends are trans, some are gay, some are lesbian, some are straight. Some are cis, some are not, some are non-binary. I mean, they're all over the place. I like people. I don't limit myself to a certain type of people. So a support group specific to me with the purpose of holding me up and helping me through, I don't have that. I seek that from inside myself. But my group of friends tends to be really diverse, going all over the place. So I hope that answers your question. This next question is from Julie K. They're wanting a little update on my bottom surgery, like how I feel about the result now that your body has had some time to heal. So update on my bottom surgery. It's been, oh boy, I don't even really know. Maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that. Maybe 4 years, I don't know. 4 or 5 years, let's go with that. So I feel really thankful for having the opportunity to have bottom surgery. I feel, even though I had some complications, I feel like I chose the right surgery for me. My main goal in bottom surgery was to get rid of the female organs and openings. I hated those things. And to have the ability to stand to pee. And both of those things were achieved. It was also really important to me to not lose any sexual sensation at all, and I didn't lose any sexual sensation at all. So that goal was also achieved. With that being said, I chose metoidioplasty rather than phalloplasty, so I'm not left with a huge penis. I'm left with whatever my body was able to manifest by itself through testosterone causing growth. And so, do I wish I had a bigger penis? Of course I do. I'm a guy. I feel like most guys want a bigger penis. But for me personally, I'm not interested in phalloplasty at this point. I feel like, for me personally, it's not gonna meet my goals. I wish another option would come out. Right now I feel like there is no perfect surgery, or even close to perfect surgery, for trans men and their genitalia. So I'm literally just waiting for something better to come out. And if something better comes out, I will absolutely get a different surgery to have a bigger penis. Because, whereas my surgery filled a huge hole in my life, it didn't fill it up completely, and honestly, I don't know if it ever will be. It's not a completely natural male phallus, and that's what my brain wants me to have, and it's just not a possibility. So am I completely happy? No. Am I content? Am I grateful? Absolutely. Absolutely. So, with all things considered, with everything that could have went wrong, and with how many people are out there that can't afford to do anything, I'm happy with where I am, and I'm, like I said, eternally grateful that I was able to get here. Okay, last question from my paper. Lori H. I wasn't sure if these were rhetorical questions or not, but I didn't want to leave you out if they weren't rhetorical questions. So here I go. You've got 2 questions. Looking back on the early years, could you ever imagine you'd be where you are now? Oh, gosh. I guess I need you to be more specific about where specifically that I am. Is it the fact that I'm male? Is it the fact that I have a family? Is it the fact that I have a YouTube following? Is it the fact that I'm successful? No, I could never have imagined. And there's one main reason. For the majority of my life, probably up until just a few years ago, to tell you the truth, I lived my life in survival mode. I was doing absolutely nothing with my brain other than focusing on how do I survive this? How do I get out of this? How do I move on? I've got to get the fuck out of here into a new place. And so for more than 30 years of my life, that's where I was. I didn't have hopes. I didn't have dreams. I didn't spend any time imagining where I would be or who I wanted to be. I was literally focusing on surviving my situation and getting somewhere else. And so, I really feel like it's only now in my life that I'm to a point where I'm able to start contemplating my story and where I was and how I got out of it and where I am now. It's only recently that I'm not living in a constant mode of just trying to survive life. And so, I'm 37 and I'm just now beginning to process things. And it's just now, that's one of the reasons why I finally went back to school to do something that I really wanted, because the career that I'm in now was a means of survival. It was a way that I could get out of where I was and make money to provide a new life for myself. But now I'm actually in a point in my life where I can think for the very first time, what do I want? I'm not trying to survive trauma. I'm not trying to survive abuse. I'm not trying to survive a toxic work situation. I'm not trying to maneuver gender transition in a toxic environment. I'm not trying to stabilize my marriage through transition. I'm not trying to survive having children. I'm finally able to stabilize myself where I can actually put some energy into myself. So, no, I didn't imagine I would be here. I had no idea where I would be. I'm happy with where I am. I can't believe I am where I am. There's every reason for me. I had every reason to fail across the board, and I don't know how I didn't. I mean, maybe I will. Maybe it's coming. I don't know. I'm happy I'm where I am, and I couldn't have imagined anything of where I am. It's good to be here, to tell you the truth. Okay, so that was the end of the questions that I printed off my computer, but here's the thing. 3 of you put questions up and then took them down. Fortunately, shirt just feels like it's sitting off center. Don't like how it's riding on my skin right now. Fortunately, I have a very good memory, and I remember that you guys asked these questions. So somebody, let's call them my phantom questionnaires, somebody asked what type of music I like. So, the type of music I like is hard to explain. My music likes go all over the place. I don't really stick to one genre, but there is a couple of factors that always play in. I tend to like music that has clean, clear tone, and that isn't, vocal and instrumental, and that isn't particularly busy. I have things with sound. I don't like a lot of sound, and so I like music that is pretty clean, pretty clear, not super high pitched usually. But I thought the best way to explain what kind of music I like is to just make a playlist. So I did. I went on iTunes and I figured out which songs I've played the most over the last, I think it was 10 years. Over the last 10 years. So I made a playlist for you. And it is on Spotify, and I will share that link in this video and down in the description of that video. So anybody that is interested in what I have listened to the most in the last 10 years, you are free to go and look at it. And just so you all know, the music is not all politically correct. It is not all kind. It is not all loving. Some of it is gross. Some of it is crude. Some of it is angry. Some of it is hateful. Some of it is loving. But I feel like music is an art form, and it helps people work through emotions and experiences. And so there will be no apologies from me over my music choices. So I'll say that ahead of time to anyone, for whoever will get offended by my music. And then let's see, what was the other question? Somebody asked if I had ever thought of writing a book about my life and experiences. I have, and I actually have a book that I've started. I started writing, documenting my experiences, and then I stopped writing it because I had shared parts of it with someone, and they basically got shell shock. They told me that they thought it was too dark, and people wouldn't be able to handle my life. It wouldn't be palatable to them. And so I am unwilling to do anything that is inauthentic. So I paused on the book, and I haven't continued it. I don't know if I will. I'm sure I will at some point. I don't have free time right now. But I was writing a book about my life, and it wasn't necessarily for other people. It was more for me, just to get it out of here and out there, out wherever. Even if no one ever reads it, just to get it out of me. So I don't know. We'll see what happens with that. I'm not really sure. And then the last question. Somebody was mentioning the few videos I put up where I was, where I shared some of the poems that I write. And they wanted to know if I'd be willing to share a few more. And sure, no problem. So I printed a few off. I'm not really going to go into much explanation of them. Not unlike music. Poems, songs, books, they all are art form. They are what they are. It's a manifestation of whatever the person needs to get out of their body or mind. All right, so the first one is titled Simon. Simon is laughing on the balcony, loud and obnoxious as the cigarette loosely dangles from his dry, cracked lips. He has bruises on his body in the shapes of nightmares and memories better left forgotten. He lifts his pant leg and reveals just enough of a mar to show he's not okay. Not at all okay. He again laughs. He is the captain of plaster and paint, the master of artful yet slipshod renovation. Simon walks into the foyer. His swagger could be mistaken for confidence, perhaps arrogance, but what exudes is indifference. Indifference forged from a vessel broken and abandoned for too long. Simon leans against the wall, hands and feet casually folded. He looks as if he is present, but he is not. He shifts positions like clockwork. He is the director of light and time, the catalyst of chemical compositions. Simon is on the street, alone on the crowded streets. He feels as though there is a large sign posted on his forehead saying, "Don't touch, damaged goods." He imagines what the signs of others might say. Walking briskly and with intention, he assures himself and the world that he is, at least, healthy. But Simon is not healthy. His ghosts pull down the corners of his mouth. So that's that one. I've got to get a little bit of water before I move on. I'll be right back. I'm back. So the title of this one is She Walks. The dress she wears rides the slow curve of her hips and pulls tight against them as she walks. Step over step she walks, moving to a rhythm she strides. Her neckline plunges, teases, forces the imagination, as the thin fabric of her delicate attire softly wash over her breasts, firm and smooth with every step moving as if separate from her body. And she walks. With fluid motion she strides. In beautiful form she sways. That one was for my beautiful wife. So this next one, I actually wrote it prior to transitioning, and so that's why you'll hear the pronouns involved in it. But I thought it was really appropriate for all the crap going on politically right now and the just constant attack on LGBTQ people from so many different vectors. And I feel like this poem, it mocks the silliness of the entire thing. So, this one is called When. Soft glances, eyes meeting eyes, separated by wisping strands of hair, moving closer together with magnetism taking over. Meanwhile, a hush falls over the land if I try to hold your hand in public or in private or at all, when girls touch girls. Hands traveling and unraveling, clothes falling off and the air thickening, and orchestras suddenly play out of sync, our debauchery infecting the foundation of society. The whole world is going to hell because I love the taste of your skin, when girls kiss girls. The temperature, it's escalating. I see your chest, it's elevating. As the demons slink out from behind the shadows, screeching evil laughter for our selfish sin, angels falling from the heaven with broken wings and shattered hearts dripping with blood, when girls fuck girls. Bodies pushing past the brink, blood rushing, tissue engorged. More than anything, I want you to feel my love. But fire and sulfur are raining down, judgment passed against the heart of this human, as I sit back with my whiskey in hand, because this girl loves a girl. Okay, so I don't really know how to end this video. Thank you for all of the questions. They were awesome questions. I asked for the Q&A having no idea what anybody would even want to know or want to ask, but somehow you all manifested a really thoughtful group of questions. So thank you for that. Thank you for being interested. If any of you watched this entire video, holy hell, and thank you for that. Past that, I'm not really sure what video I'll make next. I'll just kind of see what comes up for me, or if you have any ideas, feel free to comment. Other than that, I hope everyone's doing great, and I'll see you next time.